Well, hello everyone and happy Thursday. I am so excited to be back here with the Harvest at Home Regional Series Central Coast Edition with one of my friends and colleagues, Julia Coney. Welcome, Julia.
Thank you. Thank you guys. So much fun. I'm so excited for this.
Good. I'm excited too. And I love co-hosting or like doing on-camera things with you. You're always so much fun. And for those who don't know who you are, all two of them out there, can you let people know who you are and what you do?
I am Julia Coney. I'm a wine journalist. I'm also a contributing editor at VinePair and the recent founder of Black Wine Professionals.
Awesome. Well, we are so excited to have you. I am Amanda McCrossin. You can find me over at SommVivant. I do some Instagram-y, YouTube-y video. You can find me at the cross section of wine and video, I think is generally my shtick this time of year. But anyway, we are migrating down from the Napa Valley where we were last week with Vanessa Conlon down to the big wide appellation that is the Central Coast. It's a very, very large one, all-encompassing one. But before we get into the nitty-gritty, I was curious, Julia, have you been to the Central Coast? And two, what do you think of when you think of Central Coast?
So I went to Central Coast in 2016 or 2017. And the first thing I thought was like, it's really warm here. Like,
Yeah.
I was like, this is warm. Like, it's really hot. But everyone was so lovely, but the wine is so delicious. And I think, for me, it was an area I had never explored really. And it took me going to actually see everything. I was like, 3 days wasn't enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I had just really started in wine, so it wasn't like I knew where to go. So now I'm like, oh, I can't wait to go back. Like,
yeah,
have a lot more knowledge.
Do you remember where you went? Was there any specific AVAs that you guys focused on?
I went because I did my own like self trip. Like I drove.
Oh, good for you.
Like I drove from Los Angeles to Paso, so I was mainly so I was at a hotel, the pretty hotel that's there. Looks like here in Italy. But I was intrigued by Tin City. I thought that was kind of interesting because I was just like, oh, they're all in wines and warehouse, and it was kind of curious for me. But one of the ones I did actually find out about at a restaurant there was Calera.
Oh, cool. All right. So that was your first. Okay. Well, I'm very excited that you've already had an introduction to Calera. I would have been excited to introduce you if you hadn't, but Lord knows you can't like go to the Central Coast without hearing about or talking about Calera. But the Central Coast, as you explained, I mean, it's literally sits between San Francisco and LA in California. So it's about 300 miles north to south. So it's a huge, huge appellation. It's got 40 sub-appellations within it, including Livermore Valley, Monterey County, Paso Robles, as you said, San Benito County, San Francisco Bay is part of that as well. We also, it's technically part of the Central Coast. Yeah, so all of those little like sub-appellations of San Francisco Bay, obviously not Sonoma and Napa, but the Bay counties. And then you've got Santa Barbara County, which we are not going to be focused, even though it's part of the Central Coast AVA, we're not going to be focusing on Santa Barbara because that's actually getting its own separate week. So Santa Barbara is kind of getting its own moment to shine. So we're focusing on one sub-appellation that you've been to, so Paso Robles, one that I've been to, which is Santa Lucia Highlands, and one that I actually haven't been to, which is the very teeny tiny Mount Harlan AVA, which we'll talk about because that relates to Calera. So it's sort of this, we'll call it a monopole, but it's not officially what we should be calling it. But the grapes here, they've been here since the 1700s. They're some of the oldest grapes in the country, really, but in California. Everything from Chardonnay to Pinot, Syrah, white Rhone varieties, which we're going to try, and Cabernet Sauvignon. And certainly it can change from place to place. But what I love about the Central Coast is it's a place that sort of spans from really entry level price wise to like really high end stuff. And you can find all different types of wines within that. And so I love the Central Coast for being a place of diversity, for being a place of, access as far as price, but then also being a place where there's a lot of experimentation happening. You see a lot of winemakers that are migrating from some of these more prestigious, so to speak, more expensive appellations like Napa and Sonoma, down to Paso or down to some of these smaller sub-appellations in Central Coast, because they have a little bit more freedom to play around with different varieties, and cost of goods is a little bit cheaper. You can get a little bit more bang for your buck down there. So it's been really fun to see some of the winemakers who I'm familiar with, and I'm sure you're familiar with, down in Central Coast doing their things at sort of a fraction of the price. So as a consumer, that's a really good place to kind of look for some of your favorite winemakers who are doing projects down there, because they're probably going to be a little less expensive than some of the other things you're doing. But we're going to kick it off officially with Monterey. And I don't know about you, but when I think of Monterey, I have like a very vivid picture in my mind. I think
we both have the same picture. Is it Reese Witherspoon's house in Monterey?
Yes.
Yes, exactly. I know everybody's like, what? I'm like, yes. Live house.
Yes, it is. Like Big Little Lies, bluffs, cliffs, rocky beaches, surfing, cool little shacks, but like, just beautiful, kind of foggy. It's to me the epitome of like Northern California, like that kind of throwback vibe meets like Southern California, just like relax and whatever. And I totally think of Reese Witherspoon's house in Big Little Lies. So I'm glad that
I was like a sweater. Like that's the one thing when you go to California. I'm like, especially like here, when I went to the center, I didn't realize how cool it could be as well. Yeah. I was like, oh, okay. I had to buy a sweater. That's how I remember. Yes. Very well.
It is. I did the same thing. I went down to Monterey to Carmel by the Sea, and I got there and I was like, it's really cold here. Everything's kind of expensive here. So I went into a sweater shop and it was like, it was really high-end cashmere. And I was like, well, I guess I'll just continue to be cold.
Yes. So now I'm like, oh, we're going to California? Pack a sweater.
Yes, definitely pack a sweater. So yeah, Monterey over by the coast, it can be quite cool, since you have literally the Pacific Ocean is like right there. So it's pretty moderate over in the Monterey side. We're actually going to be within the smaller appellation of the Santa Lucia Highlands, which have you been there to the Santa Lucia Highlands? Okay. Yeah, it should be. It's a really cool place. I'd never been there. I actually went down there last year with Charlie Wagner, whose wine we're going to talk about. And he was a perfect person to give me sort of the lay of the land. And I just, I drove from Napa Valley down to there. It was about a 3.5 hour drive. Really easy, but where it's situated is in the Salinas Valley, which you may be familiar with Salinas Valley because it's called the Salad Bowl of America. So it's where you over in DC are probably getting a lot of your produce from. So this area in California creates a huge percentage of the country's produce. So everything from artichokes to all of your like leafy greens, anything you can think of in that department. A lot of it is coming from the Salinas Valley. And the reason for that is they have this really interesting climate there. So it's fairly consistent year round. So the lemons there on the trees, they can harvest them continuously all year. Every 3 months, there's a harvest of lemons. So they're, so beautiful, beautiful, fertile soils. But then it's also they call it the upside down lake because there's a lot of water underneath all those sandy soils. So as you're driving through the town of Salinas to get to some of these wineries, it's really different than up here in like Napa or Sonoma, because you're looking around and up here it's like, grapevine, 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 grapevine. There you're driving and it's like kale, grapevines, artichokes, grapevines, lemon trees. Grapevine. And like it just sort of like it's really interesting because it's not quite the monoculture that we have here in Napa. So it's it's really interesting. It's very, very rural. Lots of old families, generational farming that's happening there. But I think from a winemaking standpoint, a great place for Burgundian varieties like Chardonnay. And Chardonnay was really the place that Soleil or the Wagner family decided to go down there and look at because it was just a little bit too warm in their opinion to be farming Chardonnay up in Napa Valley. So they looked at the slightly cooler region and also windier region of Santa Lucia Highlands to start the Soleil project. And so what we're drinking is 100% Chardonnay.
This is so beautiful on the nose.
So beautiful. And don't you sort of get, and maybe it's like the power of persuasion, but don't you sort of get like a little bit of salinity, that like saltiness? Mm-hmm. I do too. And I always wonder like how much of that is in my mind and how much is in the glass. But I think if I had picked this up, I probably would have pinned it as well. And when we say like saltiness, you know, it sort of smells or it kind of reminds me of like a sweet oyster, like a freshly shucked West Coast oyster, like a little bit of brininess, but then, you know, sort of a creaminess as well. You know, it smells like a little bit of it smells a little bit rich.
It has like a great texture, and I like to call it a lighter style Chardonnay. If you used to from now, is really a much lighter, and it seems very versatile. Like we paired this with like different foods. That's what I really like about it. But have you smelled gray salt? You know, like the French gray salt.
Oh, yes.
Reminds me of on the nose.
Yes.
Is that French
that's a great call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well done. Gray salt.
Gray salt. Yeah. No, you're spot on with that. And you know what's interesting? When I was down there with Charlie, he said we planted lemon, you know, whole big thing of lemon trees just slightly north of where the vineyards are. And the wind blows right into these vineyards. And he said, I always get, you know, a little bit of like lemon zest. And I think Chardonnay is a grape that already wants to lean in that direction, especially in a slightly cooler climate. You know, we're used to getting things like apples and orchard fruits, but lemon is something that we sometimes get. I actually get it probably more on the palate than I do the nose, but
you know, the lemon oil you get when you like roll a lemon first before you cut it.
Yes.
That's what that reminds me of. If you've ever like, and you like smell it, like that's like this almost like when I taste it. It's like a lemon oil, like a little hint of lemon oil.
Yes. I think that's a perfect assessment, because it's not like, it doesn't smell like tart. It doesn't smell like the juice. It does smell like there's something a little bit rich and livelier about it. And I think that lemon oil it paints a perfect picture because it's really subtle. You know, it almost feels perfumed, or, you know, something that you would roll on your skin. Actually, as you were doing that, I was like, oh, I kind of want to like roll lemon oil on my skin.
Well, like, I know, like in Italy, and like especially when you go to like Capri, because they're known for lemon, they sell a lot of lemon-based products, and it has a faint hint of lemon. It's never really overpowering, and they sell lemon oil. Like you can buy lemon oil.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and so that's what this reminds me of. Like the minute you roll a lemon, especially a fresh lemon, you get all this oil on your hand before you cut it. And also, then if you're going to zest the lemon after that, you're getting that oil come through.
Yeah.
So it's not like lemon, like we think. It's not like lemonade lemon, right? It's not.
Right.
It's just this beautiful, subtle, soft lemon.
Yes. No, I totally get that, and I think I don't get that so much in a lot of Chardonnays in California. Like I think maybe in Australia I might get that in a few different ones. But even in Burgundy, you don't typically get you get more like lemon zest, or even lemon juice sometimes if it's, you know, really cool vintage. But I think, you know, that lemon oil might be something that's a little bit more unique to the terroir, or unique to the region that we're dealing with today. So I'll have to keep my eye out for that with some other Chardonnays. I've never put those two together, but I think that lemon oil is something that I'm going to keep as a marker for Santa Lucia Highlands or Central Coast Chardonnays. Well, also too, for people, you know, who really aren't a fan of oak, this doesn't have what people California perceived oakiness Chardonnay as well. I agree. And this does see a little bit of new French oak. But I think the way that it's integrated, to your point, it doesn't hit you over the head with like a 2x4. Like you're not getting all of that vanilla baking spice on the nose, and you're certainly not getting that, like, you know, that literal woodiness on the palate. Like it is a little bit more soft and integrated. And interestingly, Charlie was among the first in California to start experimenting with concrete vats. He went over to Burgundy back in the 90s, and he was like, this is really cool. And so he was one of the first to start bringing them over. So they really started experimenting with those at Soleil really long before a lot of the Napa producers did.
Does this see any concrete?
It does see a little concrete. The silver is the one that is all concrete. But some of this, I think, does see a little bit of concrete as well. And I don't know, you know, whether that picks up anything or not. But this, this is a little bit more richness than the Reserve does, but it still is not an overwhelming or even perceptible amount of New French oak, which I really like. And I think, to your point, for people who don't love really big, over the top, intense Chardonnays, interestingly, this Chardonnay will not be for you. I think when we get to the next wine, that could be a wine for someone who loves a little bit more richness and body in their white wine. So the Chardonnay, the Chardonnay liver.
Because I would think it's almost opposite, right? Like who wants the Chardonnay, like, will be like shocked at the next one, because they're like, oh, really? Because I was shocked when I first tasted it. I was like, this was amazing.
Well, I think everyone's probably excited to see. And I should mention, this is the Soleil is very reasonably priced. We're looking at between $20 and $25 retail for this wine. Yeah. And obviously, you can find this really across the country. So, just kind of a go-to for me, when I need a Chardonnay in that $20 camp, and I find myself in a place, with like a Total Wine or, grocery stores. You can find this wine in a lot of places, which I always really appreciate about that, because I think from an accessibility is something that's highly overlooked, especially in desperate times when you're like, I just need a bottle of wine.
Yes. And something interesting and also different, and maybe people haven't tried before, and it's a different region. I also think during this time is a great time to try different regions for people, because I also think people have been home and they've been able to understand and look at like videos like this, actually to learn about all these places that it wasn't on their radar, and which is perfectly fine.
Yeah, no, I think we've all got a little bit more time. And I know you and I were talking a couple months ago about your experience working in the retail shop, and how many people are like excited to be trying new things and all these new faces. And they're like, yeah, let's do it. We got time.
We have time. And, people are buying a little higher. You always want to find something, and you need something in that 15 to 20, but we also see the jump between the 20 to 25.
Yeah.
And so that's great to have that kind of Chardonnay.
Yeah, in that bracket. No, I agree. I think you're right. I was gonna show me your glass. Do we have the same glasses?
Yeah, I don't know. This is Andrea Robinson, the one.
Oh, that's the one. Okay, I like those too.
One. I have a different red glass because I just love my different red glass for the Pinot Noir. But I was just like, I love this. I use this for champagne. I use this glass a lot.
Really? Okay, that's good to know.
Using these. She makes one red and one white. And
okay.
When people ask me about glasses, I always send them this link because they're affordable, because you can get into glasses and start breaking in. I've broken a lot of expensive glasses over the past month, just being one of those, like, just place another order for the one and you'll be perfectly fine.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's great advice. I think you use these occasionally. I've seen you with the Mark Thomas glasses, but I've got the double bends.
The double bend. That's what I'm having for the Pinot Noir, is the double bend.
Oh, good. That's what I've got. The big one.
I love Mark Thomas, and I actually broke the universal.
Oh no! I think that's what I had.
And tripped, and it fell on carpet and shattered. Oh God.
Well, if it makes everyone out there feel better, even wine professionals who deal with these every single day, we still break glasses like nobody's business.
No, yeah. But I love the fact that Mark Thomas also are dishwasher safe.
They are, yeah. Me too. Well, I'm gonna use the all-purpose for the Booker White. So we're gonna head over to Paso Robles, which there is. How do you say it? Because I've heard both Paso Robles, Paso Robles. I've heard many iterations.
I'm pronouncing it wrong because I say Paso Robles.
Okay, I think both are right.
And so now I just go Paso. Like I can get that one because I feel like that one is just okay.
Yeah.
And then when people ask me, because people do say Paso Robles, and it just doesn't have, I don't know. I'm like, Robles. Like,
Robles.
Something to it.
Yeah. So. Well, I think, I mean, it's it's obviously got some Spanish influence to it. So I assume it is Paso Robles, or something to that effect. But yeah, I think kind of like Somm or Sommelier. If you're comfortable just saying Somm and you're comfortable just saying Paso, it's just Paso, whatever.
Yeah.
It's all good. So we're going down to Paso. And I'm so excited. I cannot believe I've still not been here. It's actually like, it's embarrassing at this point that I lived in California for 5 years and I've never been to Paso, but I promise you I will get there. But it's, it's halfway between San Francisco and LA. Yeah. Interestingly, I read on the California Wines website, which I thought was such a funny little like note about them. It has the fun-loving energy of Southern California with Northern California's sophistication and innovation. I just thought that was so funny.
I can kind of go with that.
Yeah.
When I went from LA to Paso and then Paso to San Francisco. So I flew into LA, drove all up, and then kind of finished in San Francisco. So yeah.
Yeah. And what were your takeaways when you were in Paso? What surprised you? What was interesting?
I was really shocked that I didn't know as much about it. This is untapped. This is like the secret that everybody knows, but no one's telling everybody else. Okay. It's almost like we want to keep Paso to ourselves. Yeah. So it's like people in California knew, but coming east, people on the East Coast just knew a few places. They knew the bigger ones. But when I would mention these smaller places, they were like, I've never heard of them. Never heard of them. And I was like, okay. And then that became I like the Central Coast and working in retail where we actually carry Central Coast wines and we geek out about the ones that people may not always know. It was really fun to kind of say, okay, I've been there. I've laid eyes on the soil. I've been in this region. This is really a great wines for the price. Yeah. And also they're very elegant, but it's still it's one of those things. I think also being wine media, our job is to introduce people to regions that they might not have heard. They probably know about, but we don't really talk about them because when we say California, it's just really two places. And so with this talk is how do we explore these other places in the same state?
Right. No, I think your assessment is spot on, especially, I think California in general, there's, having grown up on the East Coast and worked on the East Coast as a wine professional, there's so much that doesn't make it out of California or, only makes it so far. And to your point, even in Napa Valley, there's so many producers that a lot of people have never heard of that, I today would consider benchmarks and some of the best producers here, but you just don't see them over there. And I think even up here, I'm not seeing half of what's coming out of Paso that is wonderful. Now, of course, we're talking about Booker today, which I think is probably one of the more famous producers. And I asked a couple friends who are winemakers both up here and down in Paso. And I said, who do you think should be on the short list for the wine that we drink today? And everyone said Booker. So I was like, all right, let's do Booker.
It's so funny. I was telling someone we were coming on a chat today and I was talking about it and they were like, I'm drinking this Booker and this Air Jensen guy. I just kind of went down Booker today. And I'm like, and they were like, oh yeah, he's fun. He makes some good. And I was like, yes.
I think he's self-proclaimed crazy, or interesting, in a good way.
They were like, he's quirky. And they were like, he's fun. And I was like, oh, I like fun. I like fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I get the sense that he's got sort of a Manfred Krankl sine qua non kind of quirk about him. I've never met him. I'm sure he's great. But he's definitely doing something different there. And I think the wines definitely speak for themselves. Interestingly, we're talking about Paso, which is over 80% red wine, and we're drinking a white wine today. But I think that's okay, because I think, we're still focusing on varieties that they specialize in. So when you think of Paso, I don't know if you think like I do, but I think of, Cabernet and Rhone varieties for the most part.
No, that's what most people think. And maybe some Zin, right? Maybe some Zin thrown in there.
Yeah.
But to have, and blends. But when I saw this and I was looking up the notes and my heart leapt when I saw Viognier in this. I was like, Viognier and Paso?
Yay.
I was question, is she sure? What did Amanda pick? Oh my God, Roussan and Viognier? I just couldn't. I had to take a minute to kind of figure this out. What is this saying? What does it mean? And because it's so different. It is
really different.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really like this wine, by the way. I've had more sips than I probably should at this point, but that's okay. So I actually don't know what the official breakdown is of Roussan to Viognier. And typically this wine has a little bit of Chardonnay in it, but in 2017, it didn't. So this is all Roussanne and Viognier, all coming from Paso. They're on the west side of Paso.
Okay.
And this actually does get a little bit of skin contact. So part of the color obviously is the Roussanne and Viognier, which are naturally a little bit golden, but you're also getting a tiny bit of skin contact, which I think accounts for, do you feel that little prickliness?
Yes.
Yeah. As we stick out our tongues in it.
Right? If you told someone they're doing the skin contact white blend in Paso, just that whole statement is like, what?
Yeah. And so I know some of you are out there like, what are you talking about skin contact? Don't you just press the grapes and then like things? So white wine, you press the grapes, and then you don't leave the juice on the skin. It just comes off, unlike red wine where you leave the juice on the skin and it gets color and extraction and flavor. White wine, you don't normally do that, but in some cases it can be great to do a little bit of it. And so when you do that, you get a little bit of this like phenolic bitterness or phenolic tension. And if you think about, if you've ever eaten a peach or a pear, and you eat the skin and the skin leaves a little bit of that prickliness, that's sort of what the skin contact does. So it's not left on the skins for very, very long, but just enough to give it like a little bit of a textural element that's different from the silkiness and the, that oiliness, that glycerol that you get. And I think it's a really interesting juxtaposition between the two. What do you think?
I like it's so interesting. For me, when I first tasted, I was like, oh, whoa, hold up. Like, because I was still thinking, okay, you got these Rhone blends, this Roussanne is Viognier, this very, honeysuckle, acacia flower, floral, but then I'm getting a little bitterness from the skin contact. And how is this going to evolve, right? And then I'm thinking, what would I eat with this, right? Typically for me, because I'm from the South, I'm always thinking, and all I kept thinking was like, what if I had this with like some jambalaya?
Ooh.
Sausage, because you're getting the texture and the tension that it's bringing. Well, and I don't mean necessarily spicy. I just mean seasoned, right?
Yes.
And doing sausage and the rice and the Trinity. And I was like, because earlier today I was like, I am not opening this. I'm Corvin in this. And finally I was like, I'm gonna open it tonight and fix something. Like when we're done, I'm like,
you're gonna drink it tonight.
It's so good. It's so good.
It is so good. Yeah, well, we should back up because I think, we skipped one of the main parts of this wine, which is the aromatics. So this wine, it jumps out of the glass. And I think it's a classic representation of Viognier and Roussanne in that way, in that they are highly, highly aromatic white wines. So unlike maybe a Pinot Grigio, which is a little bit more, sedated, you get more like lemon zest, lime zest. These two varieties are like coming at your face 60 miles an hour nonstop. And you get like a really interesting sort of tidal wave of different aromatics. So as you said before, some of these acacia, honeysuckle, a little bit of like white peach, a little bit of lychee. I get some like waxiness, like a honeycomb. And it, every time you stick your nose in the glass, you get something a little bit different. And so for people, I think that love the richness and the vanilla-ness that you get with like an oaky Chardonnay, I think, they're not totally the same, but I think all of the aromatics that you love so much from that wine, and when we get to the texture of that wine, those are parallels that I think you'll find between those two wines that you might really enjoy in something like this.
Yes. I mean, it's not a typical white wine, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not if you're looking for it's bold, and when I say bold, in the best possible way, right?
Yes.
But also bold and elegant. So
very elegant.
It's one of those. So when you smell it, it just all these things just start leaps out the glass, and you're like, okay, this is very interesting. But it's two great varieties we don't normally see put together in the.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's usually
it's true.
Or in Roussanne is usually, added to something else, but we don't see that. So that's what makes this to me interesting, but also complex, but also fun because it's changing. It's one of those that definitely, we know wine changes in the glass, and this is definitely one that does that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, when all of the things that we talked about on the nose, they really translate on the palate. And so you have this like viscosity, you have this oiliness on the palate. You have this really beautiful peachy, lychee, acacia, honeysuckle, beeswaxy, but the wine is bone dry. So there's no residual sugar in this wine. And I think, and tell me what you think, because you work in retail, you work with a lot of consumers. I'm often asked the question for people who really are trying to get into wine. Maybe they only like sweet wine right now, and because their palate has developed in a way that, they're kind of at sweet wine, they're trying to get to some more drier styles. This to me is like a perfect stair step in between, because it has the perceived sweetness, it has the richness and the body that you would get from the residual sugar in a sweet wine, but it is dry. And I think, it starts to train your palate to start to like wines in a more dry style.
You have to give people something dry if they're coming from sweet. You have to slowly, bring them into that. And it's not always easy, right?
No.
It's fine too. And
no, so, sugar's delicious.
I don't like sugar, But for a lot of people, this would be a great entryway.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it has enough heft to make them, but also this is one of those I call a hand sale. You sell them, and then you also sell them something to eat, because then you go to, and then they come back and they go like, oh, this is why I like this. And that's how you create the relationship with the customer based on, hey, I want to introduce you to something that's different. And they will probably be shocked, because a lot of people think they don't like dry wine.
Right.
When they ask a question like, I don't like dry wine, but really they do. They just don't know it. Just have one that really worked with them. So this is a great entry point. I mean, this is,
Yeah, I think, my mom, who typically leans towards loving, an oakier, more rich style Chardonnay, she'll drink like a sweeter white. She loves like a Chenin with a little like RS on it, residual sugar. I think this is a wine that I could trick her palate into really liking, for all of the reasons that you just explained. And again, I mean, this is a bone dry white wine. There is no residual sugar in this wine, but it does sort of like trick your brain, trick your palate into thinking that there could be like something a little more lush in there.
Yeah, that's why I said, even though it doesn't have is bone dry, because you pair this with a dish that is somewhat lightly, even has a little spice. Like even if you pair this with,
absolutely,
it will balance it out. It will make it perfect complement.
Yes. Yeah. Jambalaya. That sounds delicious. I am positive I'm not having that in Napa Valley, because I don't think there's anywhere that does a proper jambalaya over here.
You have to learn to make it. It's really simple. Jambalaya, Creole cuisine and Louisiana cuisine is not that hard. I mean, as long as you have the Trinity, you gotta like figure everything else out.
Yeah, I've never tried my hand at it, but I will say when I was down in Florida, there was this place called Voodoo Bayou that we would go to every Friday night and get like jambalaya, and like they made the most proper biscuit I've ever had, and beignets, and it was so good. And I was like, it was the one thing when I came back to, I was like really craving an avocado and some great produce, but it was the one thing that I was like, if I could just bring this with me here, like everything would just be perfect. But that would be delicious, a little jambalaya and Booker white wine. So, yeah. And to your point, I mean, this is a handle. This is definitely not something that someone's going to just like pick up off the shelf and say like, this looks, I mean, the label's beautiful, but I think this does require like, a little bit more understanding.
Can I tell you now, with everything going on, it's easier to sell this type wine?
I believe that. Yeah.
Because people come in and they're tired from work, and they come in and they're like, oh, I just want a white wine. But now they're asking the questions because they have time. Like, what are you drinking? What did you get new into the store? There are emails coming and questions every day. And this is like, oh, we got something like this. People, and I'm like, here's the name. Go online and it's easier to sell these type wines now than it was before.
I believe that. And I think I think it's great that you're part of that conversation and helping to lead the way in that area and around the world, obviously, because people are listening to you online too. But yeah, I mean, I think and don't you think it's so interesting and so fun that California offers so much? Like, I think about other regions in the world, and it's like, where else can you go besides maybe Australia that like, you can have all of these different styled Chardonnays, you can have a Rhone white, we're going to get you like a Burgundian styled Pinot Noir. You can have this all within 300 miles of one single state. I always find that fascinating.
I think also too, California, but California has always been that renegade state. We want to Okay. So you can go and say, I know this grape isn't normally here, but I'm going to plant this over here, right?
Yeah.
People are like, I'm intrigued. What is happening? That is California. And I don't think that could actually happen in a lot of other states, even, in the US. But California, to me, it has one of those just beliefs that, hey, I mean, it's still like we think about the gold rush state, right?
Yes, exactly.
That we can transform and change. And that's why when people's like, oh, I'm going to the Central Coast and I'm gonna plant Rhone varietals, right? Rhone varieties, like I'm going to do that. And where that may seem a little quirky somewhere else, and to me in Central Coast, I'm like, well, that's just normal. That just sounds
like I think that is the story of Central Coast and the story of California. It's like free to be you and me. Like, do you want to do it? Do it. Like, own it. Nobody's going to tell you no. And I think that is one of the beautiful things about, about California is there really, and the United States in general, like there really aren't rules in that way, like in the way that we have. You can label it California, you can label it Paso Robles, you can label it whatever you want. No one's telling you that you have to plant a certain variety in this region, or else it's going to be labeled as a wider appellation without specificity. And I think that is such a cool aspect of California that I don't really think I understood until I moved here and started diving deeper into California wine.
They're allowed to be creative. They're allowed to be creative. And that's what, we think a lot of winemakers and the wine people in the great people who make wine, they're creatives too. I mean, they're farmers and they are creative at heart. In their mind, they're painting a landscape in a glass. And this is allowed to do this. Yeah. They're thinking this is our land. This is the climate pretty much. And we're going to create something, even if like people go, oh, it's kind of weird. I didn't know that happened. But then they're like, yeah, we're just going to do it. And it has worked. It has worked.
Totally. It has more than worked. I think, it's so interesting to see even a lot of European winemakers who are second, third, fourth generation who are like hanging up their hats over there and they're coming on over because they're like, well, my parents have done it this way and I'm supposed to continue doing that. And I don't really want to do it that way anymore.
And that's the beauty, I think, of California.
Yeah. Well, I think a great example of that to some degree, obviously, is Booker. But as we move to the Calera and the story of Josh Jensen, my goodness, there was tell me what you think. But was there any escaping doing a conversation on the Central Coast and not including Calera and the story of Josh Jensen?
I remember in a restaurant and the lady was like, you haven't had Calera? And she just went to the bar and I was like, and I was with my friend Kim and we were like, what happened? Like we just and I remember Kim going like, no, but it's too hot here. That was me trying to I was literally trying to explain like, no, the climate, no, I'm like, it's also too, I was there in August. So I want you to think how
it was hot.
I was trying to explain like, why are you pouring me a Pinot Noir? And she was like, just taste it. And then that's when we were like, yeah, we were like, she poured it like a little bit. And then we're like, yeah, we're going to take the bottle. Like we're going to have the bottle with dinner. So.
Well, I had a similar experience to you because I was working at Press and that was really the first time. Well, that's not true. Actually, there was a wine list that I worked with that we had Calera, but then we stopped carrying it. So I only had like a tiny little introduction to it. And I didn't know the story. And it wasn't until I got to Press that I started working with Scott. And Scott was obsessed with the older Caleras. And I was like, I don't know these wines. I don't know anything about them. And he was like, just you wait. And at the time, I mean, this is probably 4 years ago, you could still get some Caleras with like 20, 30 years of age on them. And they weren't terribly expensive. So my first in
times have
changed. Sometimes you can find them pretty reachable, but yeah, so my first experience with Calera was actually Caleras with 30 years of age on them. So yeah, I know, like in true Press fashion, like my job was just ridiculous. Nobody gets to have the experiences that I got to have, but I did. I was very fortunate, but yeah. So
I realized you got the big Mark Thomas glass out. You pulled the big gun out.
Well, I have like one and one. So I don't know, maybe I need to get more glasses, but yes, so I had the regular like red expression glass.
Yeah. I'm gonna switch glasses up.
Oh, good. I actually found, I don't decant Pinot Noirs ever. But I always find the Caleras, especially the young ones, need like just a tiny bit of air. So yeah, I put it in here. I like it in both glasses. I actually had it in this glass earlier, but I needed this for the white wine because I didn't think the Chardonnay would do as well in a wider glass. So I switched them, and I liked what came out aromatically in this glass a little bit more because I think it highlighted more of the savory undertones. Mm-hmm. And in this glass, it becomes a little bit more fruity, and I think that's okay. But Calera to me is not a wine that leads with fruit. It's a wine that leads with like savory goodness and like herbs. Mm-hmm. So to back.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. You go ahead.
No. Go ahead.
Talking about herbs, right? It is definitely, I think, holiday herbs. Herbs, whichever way you say them.
Whatever.
It is definitely rosemary, thyme, those kind of like that dried parsley, not fresh parsley.
Yes. If you would put it on a chicken, it's probably on here.
That's a good way of saying that.
Yeah. Anything you'd throw in a chicken. So the reason that we say we can't talk about Central Coast without talking about Calera is, so Josh Jensen, who founded this in the 70s, a scholar, went to Oxford, went to Yale, two pretty okay schools, whatever. Who cares? But he went to work a harvest at a teeny tiny obscure winery called Domaine Romani Conti, otherwise known as DRC. Not so obscure, actually, kind of famous. So he works there. Then he works another year at another teeny tiny winery called Domaine du Jacques. We all know, super expensive, like crazy over the top wines. So I mean, clearly this guy is like laying the groundwork for life, right? So he works at Domaine du Jacques, and he's like talking to all his mentors, and all of them across the board are saying, he's asking about Pinot Noir and Chardonnay in the New World in California. And they say, well, you can't do unless you have limestone. It has to be limestone. So Josh was like, great. So he goes to California, spends 2 years looking all over California, finally finds this little tiny place. It's essentially a little mountain, not that little actually, right next to San Benito Valley, called Mount Harlan. And it goes up to like 2,500 feet elevation, and it is nothing but limestone. And he finds this place, he like sets his flag down, and he's like, this is where we're going to make Pinot Noir. And he does it. And to date, it is one of the most revered sites for Pinot Noir. Robert Parker has called Calera one of the most compelling Pinot Noir specialists of not only the New World, but of planet Earth. Mm-hmm. It really is truly a special, special place. Calera, interestingly, I didn't know this until I looked it up. Calera is actually Spanish for lime kiln. Did I get that right? Yeah, Spanish for lime kiln. And that is what this little symbol in the bottle is. That's a lime kiln there. So, yeah, kind of interesting. So, limestone rich, it's about 37 miles inland from the Pacific Ocean. So you've got the coastal influence, you've got the limestone, you've got the elevation, you've got all the things you essentially need to make great Pinot Noir. And, 40-ish years later, they're still doing it. And I think these wines are so special. And so Josh saw this place as being very unique, obviously, and he petitioned the TTB, or whatever the bureau was back then, in the early 1990s, and actually got Mount Harlan established as its own AVA. So it is it's not only a monopole, which would describe a vineyard or a ludi, a small little parcel is controlled by one particular winery. It's actually an entire AVA that's controlled by one winery, and that is Calera. So there's only 2 places in North America that have that. Only a handful of places around the world. So, very special to have a wine that's not only coming from one single vineyard, but a wine that really controls the entire appellation. And I don't know about you, but I'm still always I don't understand how these wines can be the price that they are, because you look at other Pinot Noirs that have, they're good, but like, they don't have the pedigree that this wine has. They're not a single appellation wine, single vineyard wine, and they're 3 times the price. So this one is coming in at $65. Calera across the board, I think the most expensive you'll ever see it at new release is about $100, which is still a lot less than what you would expect from some other bigger producers. And not to knock anybody, but like I've always found a lot of value in Calera, and I think it's one of those highly underrated, for those who don't know it, wineries in North America.
it's our job to change that. So one of the things when I think of like Pinot Noir specifically in this style of beauty is wine is fragrance. That's one of those things. Like it's almost like I want to go and like, you know, dab it on.
You are after this. I'm going to like restock my fragrance cabinet with like lemon oil and like herb oil. Like this is what I'm doing.
When you put like that's what a beauty we love is like wine people, you know, and people who are like novices and everything. The one thing we notice is smell, right? Smell is such a sensory memory for most people. You can remember where you were in something great, something sad. It's just scent is what that does.
It's our strongest sense.
And so when you smell this wine, you just get this beautiful like herby, but also this savory component that, and when I say savory, not just meaty, like I'm just talking savory as in, I just want to be in like we call like the dew when the mist comes down, like this is, you know, I want to just smell this more and more and more. And that's why you say when you know Pinots like this needed more air and that it's one of those wines like this is going to be so interesting also in another 30 minutes, in another hour. Yeah. Just it really, really opens up. I mean, it's open and it's great. And this is great, you know, glasses to have that in, but just over the progression of an evening. This is the wine I think when the world opens up, this is the wine when I was like, I'm having people over, I want to have them with this.
Yes, I think that's a great idea. Roast a couple chickens, have some jambalaya with your booker, and then have this with your chicken. You know, it's interesting.
Aperitif wine. It's gonna be come on in. Here's a little
even better. Yeah, this can totally be drunk alone.
Aperitif wine. You know, you get people when what I call aperitif wine is basically like crab salad on Ritz crackers and just that.
Ooh. Yeah, do you make your own crab salad?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's just easy. It's easier and it tastes better.
I do have to say, and I know this is a California situation, but I still think the East Coast is crushing us on the crab front.
Yes. Yeah.
The blue crab is superior to the Dungeness.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hate to say it. And I love Dungeness crab, but
it's different.
I was back home. I had some blue crab and I was like,
the sweetness, right?
It's so sweet.
That's why I say when you have it, like this is one of these, like today when we're talking like Central Coast wines and people are thinking, oh, if I could have people over, you know, not like a real party, but like small, this is when you have a progression of beautiful wines and amazing price points and great dishes. You're getting all of that.
Yes. Man, what a crazy sensory experience that someone will have when they do that. I mean, this is changing. Like every single time I put my nose back there, I'm getting something different, which is the mark of a great wine. You know, when you have something that is dynamic, that changes, you know, every time you go back to it, it's like, wow, it's like a totally different wine. And then, you know, even in the palate, you look at the color of this wine and it's, you know, it's fairly opaque. Like, you know, it has, I can just kind of see my hand through it. I don't expect it to have the texture and the weight that it does, which I think is really interesting because I think this wine could be a lot lighter and yet it's deep. It kind of has like a thickness to it, but it's not coming from, it's not really coming from oak and it doesn't really appear to be coming from viscosity. I don't know where it's coming from, but there is like a weight and a lushness to this wine.
But also the weight is not coming from alcohol. We have this, because sometimes I think a lot of people think of weight equals alcohol and this isn't.
Right. Yeah, I mean, when I say viscosity, I mean, like, you know, it doesn't have that alcohol glycerin. It doesn't appear to be coming from any sort of like oak influence. You know, it really feels like these are maybe thicker skinned Pinot Noir grapes. I don't know. And maybe with the wind up there, maybe with the elevation, you know, it's 2,200 feet elevation. So higher elevation, you know, going to give you a little bit more tannin, going to give you a little bit more richness. But you do, you know, this notion of minerality is one that has been met with a lot of controversy as of late. And I do believe that there is an element of minerality that we can't necessarily quantify. And I don't know if it comes from the limestone. I don't know if the limestone supports it. But I do get a little bit of a limestone chalky minerality to this wine, both on the nose and on the palate. You know, underneath all of those herbs, there is that, you know, that sort of, not champagne, but there is like a chalky dust there to it.
It does, but I'm getting also shaved chocolate. Shave more milk than dark.
Okay.
Like if you just shave fresh chocolate, like it just smells very different. Like especially then like if you actually like just smell the bar when you shave it because the oils are being released from the cacao. That's totally like it's this little underlying little bit of chocolate.
Yeah. Julia, you're making me very hungry. I think this is
wine and food.
I'm gonna like beeline into the kitchen after this. I know wine and food are married. And I should add, tomorrow we're actually gonna be I'll be on Instagram taking over California Wine's Instagram, and I'll be with Aida Molenkamp. She's taking over California Grown, and so she brings a recipe to the table. So she's doing a little pairing for us tomorrow, and we're gonna keep Calera, but not the Pinot. We're switching to the Chardonnay.
Oh, that's
for tomorrow. Yeah. So
people know
that will be at 3:00. Thank you. 3:00 Pacific time on Instagram. Because food and wine are married, especially I think in California, where we have such an abundance of options, from produce to proteins, everything from the sea to the land. It really is quite the bounty here in California. And so, finding dishes that pair with wines is quite easy around here because there is so much great wine and so much great food, and it's really easy to put them together. So that's what we're doing on Fridays. But, to me, this is a wine that is, it doesn't smell, I wouldn't mistake this for Burgundy because I think it is a California wine. It has ripeness, but it has Burgundy in a stylistic sense about it that I really love. And I think I'm dying, it's a little bit chilly here today. I'm dying to like roast a chicken with all of the herbs that you mentioned before, throw a little garlic in there, tie it up, enjoy that jus, really get it going, then have some like roast potatoes on the side. And this is like the perfect wine to do that with.
And people who are watching, you can't have red wine and chicken. I know that. Yeah. We this pairing of white meat, and I love Pinot Noir in chicken. Yes. I think it's a great combination. And if you're like me, if you love barbecue, traditional style, which is smoke, Pinot Noir and barbecue. Like Texas style barbecue, no sauce. No sauce.
Have you watched the new Chef's Table barbecue series?
I've watched it 3 times.
Okay.
Because I was like watching it like yes.
So hungry.
So hungry.
I'm gonna watch it again because I missed most of the Australian one, and I heard that was the best one.
Okay.
Or someone had told me that, so I don't know if that's the universal agreement. But man, what a great barbecue series.
I think everybody has their version. If you're in South Africa, fry. In Australia, but people love smoke, and I always like to say traditional Texas barbecue is smoking, which is smoke, and grill, fire, 2 different things. But I think they complement each other in different ways. And the more I think about barbecue, and I love Pinot Noir with that because barbecue is one of those things that change. Like when it comes right off, it tastes different. Pinot Noir is the same thing. So for me, I'm always playing with that like fun play of like barbecue and grilling and red meat and white meat in talking about food. So
yes. And I should add, I really only ever want the dark meat in a chicken. So when I say chicken, I mean dark meat and Calera.
You mean like thigh meat.
Thigh meat, yes.
I'm thinking like a brisket. Like I love brisket, and because you get that caramelized bit where it's kind of like crunchy, almost kind of burnt, and that the slight milk chocolate shavings I was talking about, the smell, and then just to go with something like that.
Yes. No, I think when you said that, I was like, oh yeah, like has like a little bit of like a mole thing going on too.
Definitely mole. Like any mole thing will go with this. So then lead to Mexican food, right? Traditional, authentic Mexican mole style.
Mole, poblano, some chicken, and yeah. Oh man, that sounds all sorts of delicious. Well, yeah. I mean, I'm so excited because we tasted 3 wines today. Josh Jensen with Calera really changed the landscape for Pinot Noir in California, and that started in the Central Coast. The Booker white wine, I think when we think of Paso, we think of experimentation. We think of, some mavericks out there, renegades doing their thing, kind of doing what they want. And then, Santa Lucia Highlands with the Chardonnay from for Soleil, and really embracing that coastal influence, the winds that flows there, and acknowledging that this is fertile landscape, beautiful soils, and a place where lots of produce grows. So we had quite the lineup today. I hope you're not terribly overwhelmed now and can get back to whatever it is you were doing without feeling like you need to take that Booker white wine to the face.
No, I want to take it to the face, but I really was like, I'm literally thinking like, okay, what can I make really quick so I can taste all the wines again with something very quickly? Like what do I have left over? And I actually have a little leftover barbecue, so I'm gonna save that. Like it's like noodles, like that are left over. So yeah.
I make fried rice with all my leftovers. If it can be put into fried rice, that's my MO, and I totally plan on doing that with my Booker white wine tonight.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, this has been so much fun. Thank you for being here with me, and thanks for drinking on a Thursday afternoon, or I guess it's evening where you are. This is a little earlier.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, this is appropriate time.
Yeah, it's fine. It's 5 o'clock somewhere. Right.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere. Before we go, can you just let everyone know where they can find you?
You can find me online, social media, Julia Coney, and website juliaconey.com.
Perfect. And for those who, like I said, the two of you watching who don't know Julia, we're following for, definitely check out her blog because it's really well done. Really friendly for consumers just getting into wine, but also really great for people who already know a thing or two and are looking to have a little bit of fun. Because I think you paint a totally different light, and you just do a great job with it. So I will look forward to seeing you on Instagram, which is where you and I usually connect. But until then, enjoy the rest of your wine. I will see everyone here next week again at 1 o'clock, where I will be with Baxter Holmes talking about Sonoma and doing some fun stuff there. So and then tomorrow, of course, don't forget 3 o'clock on Instagram. I'll be there with Aida for What Grows Together Goes Together. So always a treat. We will be sure to post all the wines below wherever this is existing, so everybody knows what we drank today. And I'll see you soon, Julia.
See you. Thank you.
All right, bye.